Okay, here on Metal Talk, it gives me great pleasure to be here in the company of Les Binks. Fondly remembered as the drummer of Judas Priest between 1976 and 1979, I believe.
It was a dirty job, but someone had to do it.
Exactly, he did it very well. And I think the reason why we're talking here today is that recently you've started a new band, Les Binks Priesthood, where you revisit those years. So what was the reasons behind that?
Simply because I've been working with various guitar players. I've been introduced to some really good guitar players recently. And I've been doing in various situations with them, playing venues, and when people find out that was who I was on drums, they got a lot of people asking for Priest stuff. So eventually I thought, well, if that's what they'd like, let's put something together. And initially it was just an idea for a one-off gig, you know. It was for one night only. So I asked the guys that I had in mind if they'd like to do it, and they were keen to do it. So I had to then sit down, and I only wanted to do material from my era with the band. I didn't want to go beyond that. And we were asked to do a thing which happens every year in Great Yarmouth, which is the Legends of Rock thing. So I thought that would be a good place to do it. And we then had to think about a set list and what songs we were going to choose. So I went right back. The very first tour I did with Priest was the Sin After Sin tour, because although I didn't play on the album, Simon Phillips played on that. The tour that was set up to promote that album, that's the first tour I did. So I had to play a lot of that stuff live. And so we went back and we took a few songs off that, which were also featured on the live album, the Unleashed in the East album. A lot of that material was on there. Songs like Sinner, you know, was on that. But I hadn't played those songs in many years, you know, so I had to completely revise on them and relearn all my drum parts. So I had to get that album, the Stained Class album, which was the first studio album I did, and then the Killing Machine album, or Hellbent for Leather if you have the American version, and then the Unleashed in the East, the live album. And I had to go back on those, select the tracks that we're going to do, and relearn all the drum parts. And I was a little crazy because I was thrown in at the deep end very unexpectedly. I went along to see Ripper Owens in London in, I think it was June last year, and he invited me up on stage to do some Priest stuff, you know. I mean, the stuff that I played on, like Hellbent for Leather and all that, and so I got on stage, jumped behind their drummer's kit, and I thought, how do these songs go now, you know? So it was like certain memory jogs straight away, you know. But we got through them, you know. It was good fun, and it kind of brought memories back, and it reminded me what fun it was to play that stuff, and I always really enjoyed playing that material. And so once we got into rehearsals, we put a set together, and as I say, it was initially just an idea for a one night only thing, but we did a little impromptu rehearsal gig just to prepare ourselves for the Legends of Rock thing, and that was at the Cavern, which I think you.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, excellent, fantastic.
And so that was our baptism, you know. And then after we did those gigs, we got a lot of interest coming in from people, and a lot of, you know, offers to do other shows, you know. So that's something I'm sort of working on right now, and trying to maybe develop on. And
tell us about who you've got in the band. So quite new names to a lot of people.
The two guitar players. One guy I was really impressed with is a guy called Simon J. Pinto, and actually Simon started off playing drums, but he's a multi-instrumentalist. He plays drums, and then he plays amazing guitar, and he also plays bass and stuff. And he's got his own studio, and he does a lot of work for people in that. But he lives outside of town, and so I asked him first of all, and then there was Gus Mark, who is somebody I'd seen playing in other bands, and I'd done a few gigs with him as well. And I knew he'd be into it because he also, I did one gig with him where he played Beyond the Realms with him, and he had the solo off.
I must admit, that night he did the solo perfectly.
Yeah. So he was in, and I'd been working with Paul, the bass player, in other situations as well. He was up for it, and we had to find a singer.
This is the difficult part, really.
That's the difficult part, yeah. And because it was a one-off situation, like I said initially, it was going to be just one gig and that was it, thanks and goodbye. I had real difficulty finding someone who was brave enough to take on the vocal role. And Adam Shepard was up for it. So we asked Adam to do it. I thought it was very brave of him to take on the role because it's bound to come in for a lot of.
Because nobody can equal vocal for nobody.
I think Rob was supposed to have a 3-octave range vocal, and there ain't too many people like that around, you know. So that was the lineup anyway for that gig, and that was it. That was going to be the end of it. Good night, you know. But we've had a lot of interest and a lot of requests to do other things. And ideally, I'd like to have done some of the festivals this year, but it was a bit too late for that, you know, because they're all booked up about a year ahead. So maybe next year we'll be up for some of those.
Has it surprised you the amount of offers that are coming in?
It has, yeah. And it surprised me also the amount of publicity it's picked up on the internet.
I think the great thing about it, even I'm 50 years old myself this year, but I was too young to see Judas Priest on that tour. So just to see Les Binks' Priesthood revisit songs like Evil Fantasies, Running Wild, Rock Forever, etc., etc. It's just like a dream come true. It's a dream gig for me, personally. You know.
And Evil Fantasies I don't think we ever played that live. You know, so that was a new one. And I think on this tour that they're doing at the moment, Priest are doing in America, they're playing Saints in Hell, which is off the Stained Class album. I think that's the first time that they ever played that live as well. You know. So yeah, there's stuff coming out again that hasn't been viewed for some time.
Excellent. Before we go deep into your Judas Priest career, let's talk about other things at the moment. You hit the news recently, but a project with KK Downing, sort of an interactive band called Devilstar. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. That came about through a guy called John Madeira, who owns a company called Devilstar. And he's based in Las Vegas, and he's in partnership with Paul Crook, who's guitar player that was in Anthrax for a while, and also is Meatloaf's guitar player nowadays, and he's also his Meatloaf's producer. So they asked me if I would take part in a recording project for Devilstar. And I said, well, what do you want me to do, you know? And of course they're big Priest fans, so they wanted to do something that connected with my era with the band. And as I wrote Beyond the Realms of Death, I suggested we recorded that one. So we did that, and of course it also coincidentally happened at a time when I had reconnected with KK after a long...
I think about 37 years, yeah.
And there's no real logical reason for that other than when I left the band, it was really down to the management that they had then in those days, who were notoriously rip-off merchants. And
as was the case in the 70s.
yes. And I was a victim of that, so my reason for leaving the band was breakdown in relationships with management, not with the band, but I was rather disappointed, shall we say, that nobody in the band contacted me or said, oh, what's the problem, you know, can we sort this out, we don't want to lose you, you know. That didn't happen. So you automatically assume that their views are the same views as the management, which is probably not the case at all. But a lot so I haven't really spoken to any of the guys in the band since I left. KK was the very first person I've been in touch with, you know. And he seemed delighted to see me. That was brilliant, you know. And that came about because I was contacted by an American journalist to do an interview for KK's Steel Mill website. And through that, it led me to get in contact with him again. And when we met up, we had a great evening together, you know, went out for a few pints of Guinness and whatever, and had a long chat. And I suggested doing something together, you know. So when this came along, I thought, great, I'll ask KK if he'd play on it.
Perfect.
He agreed, you know.
Yeah.
So that was great. And then, of course, the vocalist was important. So I also had a chance encounter as well with Tim Ripper Owens at a gig he was doing in London. And he invited me up on stage to do a few Priest songs. And I got up there, and then I thought, hang on a second, haven't played these songs in years, you know. So the memory went into overdrive to try and remember the arrangements for everything. And we did, I think we did Hellbent for Leather. We did Green Manalishi. What was the other one? Running Wild, I think. We did about 3 songs. So that was fantastic. Again, it brought back just how much fun it was to play that stuff. Brought back the feeling that I used to get from playing them. And that sort of sparked an interest in maybe doing a band with that material. So I asked him if he would sing on it, and he said he would. So that got 3 of us, three former members of Judas Priest.
Yeah, old and new members. Yeah.
And so the other guitarist, of course, is Paul Crook. As I say, works with Meatloaf's band these days, and Joey Vera on bass. He's based in Los Angeles, as far as I'm aware. And he was in a band called Armored Saint.
Yeah, very good band.
So he's also big. Yeah. They're all big Priest.
Well, fair enough, Armored Saint were heavily influenced by Priest. Yeah.
So that completed the lineup for the recording project, and the release date on that is
June the 1st.
June the 1st this year. Yeah. So
it's only the one song you've recorded so far, is it?
It's just the one song for now. Yeah. With the option for if everybody wants to do it. The problem is, most decent musicians are going to be involved in various projects, and even with the Priesthood band, all the guys are doing different stuff, you know. So I have to know that I can get everybody together on the same night if we're going to take on a gig. So I know, you know, KK had a as you know, you may know, he had invested a lot of his fortune in a golf course, which I heard recently has gone down the tube, you know. So where he's at now, I don't know. I haven't spoken to him recently to see what his particular ambitions are from here on. So things are still developing, and what way it all ends up, waiting to see what's his
I must admit, I know the fans undoubtedly want KK back on stage in one shape or form.
I think I personally think it would have been better if they had got KK back in the band, because I've seen...
As in the current Judas Priest lineup?
Yeah, because, I mean, it's very sad news to hear about Glenn, you know, but when I spoke to KK, he told me that he was very unhappy with the way he didn't think the band was performing to its best of its ability, and when it came down to it, I said he seemed to be pointing the finger at Glenn, and I said, well, what was the problem? And he said, Parkinson's, and I wasn't sure whether he was making an assumption or whether it was something which was officially diagnosed, you know. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really push it, and I didn't really go into it in too much detail, but he felt that obviously it was, and I think it's 10 years ago that he was diagnosed.
It was about that time, yeah.
So I suppose over the years, initially it didn't affect him too badly as far as his guitar playing, because Glenn was a fantastic guitar player, as everybody knows, you know. And I loved the solo he did on Beyond the Realms. It's a classic solo. Very, very talented guy. And but obviously, as the disease progresses, it starts to affect your ability to coordinate and do the things that you would normally find easy. So, it must have been, I mean, KK must have been aware of the fact that he wasn't able to perform the same standard as he has been known to play in the past. And that was one of the reasons that he was...
Did KK offer his services at all, do you know?
Sorry?
Did KK offer his services?
I don't think so. I think... Sometimes this reminds me of my departure from the band, because it was kind of that standoff, you know. I'm not speaking to you and you're not speaking
exactly,
to me, you know. And it saddens me to think that a band of musicians that have been through all those years and have been such a successful metal band and have carved out their place in metal history, that comes to this point in their life, and there seems to be, you know, they've just blanked each other, you know, there's no friendship there, you know, there's got to be, I mean, after all that time together, it's a bit like a marriage, you know.
It happens with a lot of bands though, doesn't it really? You know, a lot of bands, there's a business side, there's a friendship side, and when they do leave, there's differences.
I know that even if you think back to when Rob left the band, Rob Halford left, there was some certain amount of animosity then as well, and not everybody was up for having him back in the band again. But they got around that eventually, and it was a smart move, you know.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But you know, it's like a marriage, I suppose, you know, and people get offended, I suppose, but apparently, as far as I'm aware, I'm not KK, so I can't speak on his behalf, but apparently they haven't really been in contact with each other. So when it came to Glenn's decision not to appear on stage on this tour, I think it would have been a smart move to have asked him back, asked KK back, because it's weird when I've looked at some of the YouTube videos from this tour, and it doesn't look like Judas Priest. You haven't got those two main guys there, you know, who were, I mean,
well, it's such an iconic image, wasn't it, KK and Glenn?
And so you only have two original members now. You only have Rob and Ian Hill, bass player. So if they'd had KK there, I think Richie would have been quite capable of taking over.
And you've worked with Richie as well.
I have worked with Richie.
Yeah, we'll get to that later.
Yeah. And so I think that would have been the ideal thing, you know, and the band would have resembled Judas Priest.
That could still happen in the future, because Andy Steep's not an official member as such. He's only a tour member.
No, I haven't met him, so you know, I don't know really.
There's still borders possibly can be crossed at a later date. But let's just move away from Priest a minute. Let's talk about yourself and your early career. I mean, I think your first notable recording was with a band called Fancy.
That's right, yeah.
In 1974, 2 singles, a cover of Wild Thing, and a song called Touch Me. Sort of a glam rock backbeat of a female singer, I believe was Helen... Is it Kunt, if I pronounce her name correctly? Sorry? Is it Helen Kunt, the singer?
Yeah, well, that's a strange situation, because the guy who produced that was a guy called Mike Hurst, who used to be in the Springfields with Dusty Springfield. And he went into the business side of things and ran a management company and became a producer. And he produced all Shwaddy stuff, a lot of hit records for people in the 70s.
Yeah.
And he thought it'd be a good idea to do a version of Wild Thing and have a girl singing it.
Yeah, it's sort of a sexy, seductive number, isn't it?
Yeah. So he went into the studio with a bunch of session musicians. It had Mo Foster on bass and Ray Fennick on guitar, who later joined the Ian Gillan band.
And Mo Foster's played with everybody, Gary Moore, everybody.
Yeah, and but the drummer on that isn't me. It's Henry Spinetti.
Yeah.
Who's Victor Spinetti's brother, the actor. It was all the Beatles films. So that was just put together as a one-off session, and it was released on Atlantic Records, and it was banned by the BBC here because they thought it was too provocative. They got a girl who was a penthouse pet, and she looked great, and she was okay for that style of she more or less heavy breathed the track, and
I won't sing it to you here.
but the concept, the idea of it worked perfectly. But in those days the BBC were very fuddy-duddy, old-fashioned in their attitudes, and they banned it. They wouldn't play it. They said it was too provocative.
So it's a big hit in the States.
Yeah, too sexually provocative, you know.
So you did recording it yourself, you say?
I didn't play on that.
Oh, right, but you was on the pitch on the single.
I did the album.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, but that was the single.
Yeah.
It's the very first
Okay.
one-off single. So the record was released in the USA, and it charted there. It got in the top 10, I think. So the record company came back to the producer and said, "Oh, can we have an album from these guys?" You know. So I got a call from, I think it was Ray Fennick, and asked me if I would be interested in getting involved in this. So I said yeah, and we started rehearsing material for it. We had to find a singer because, as I said, the girl who sang "Heavy Breathed" on the Wild Thing track, she wasn't really a versatile singer. So we went into Delane Lee Studios in Wembley, which has been bulldozed now, doesn't exist. It used to be right by Engineers Way, near the stadium. And we recorded all the tracks there. And of course we had to choose the keys in advance. And then we started to audition singers. And because we'd already recorded the backing tracks, we had to find a singer who could sing in those keys as well. Some of the singers that came along were good singers, but the keys were wrong for them, which meant that we'd have to record them all again, you know. But we found a girl called Annie Kavanagh, and she was in Jesus Christ Superstar, and she could sing them all perfectly, you know, and she looked great as well. So she joined, and we went off and we toured America, and we did a tour in the UK with 10cc around the time they had a big hit with "I'm Not in Love," you know. It was off the original soundtrack album. So we toured all over the UK with 10cc, and we had a big party. We ended up at Hammersmith Odeon, and they were staying in a hotel just outside of London near Heathrow Airport, and we went back there for the end of tour party, and completely ransacked, destroyed the drummer's hotel room. You know? But that was I really enjoyed that tour, you know, because I loved the band as well.
Yeah.
They were all nice guys as well. And I was very.
What was the name of the album?
Which album?
Fancy, the album you played on.
The first one was called, what's that? So long ago now, I haven't looked at it for ages. I think it was just called Wild Thing, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, look it up.
From the single. And then we made a second album, which was for Arista. And the Arista record label had just started up, and we were one of the first bands to get signed up by them. So that lasted for a couple of albums, and And it was through Fancy that we got involved with Roger Glover. Roger had seen the band, and at the time he wasn't in Purple. It was during his time outside of the band. He'd been approached to make an album which was based on a book called The Butterfly Ball. And so he asked us to play on it. We were the rhythm section. It was me, Mo Foster, Ray Fennick. And we recorded most of the album at Kingsway Studios, which was Ian Gillan's studio. And
so there's a whole host of stars on that album. There's Glenn Hughes, David Coverdale, Ronnie James Dio, Tony Ashton. There's a whole host of names. John Norton. That's
right, yeah. And Glenn Hughes was on it, who you've interviewed as well. So once we'd finished the album, we had a big party at Roger's house, you know, and he had a house in Farnham Common at the time. I think he lives in Switzerland now. And then we were asked to do a follow-up concert at the Royal Albert Hall. And so we started rehearsals for that. And Mark Nossif was playing percussion, as well as what's the guy, Chris Caron, who was the drummer with the Dudley Moore Trio. He was playing tabla on one of the tracks. And so we started rehearsing for the concert at the Royal Albert Hall. And they managed to bring in, well, they brought in Ian Gillan as a guest singer for one of the tracks. Then we had David Coverdale and Ronnie Dio. Who else was on that? We had, of course, Glenn Hughes.
Yeah, Coverdale.
Yeah, and they even brought Twiggy in.
That's right, yeah, for the concert, yeah.
Who was lovely.
Yeah,
really nice lady.
Big famous English model, for those who don't know.
But the classic ones, we got Vincent Price, the actor, you know, from all the Hammer horror movies and stuff, to do narration from the Royal Box, you know, because it was based on a book, each song represented a character in the book. And so Vincent Price did a link between each song. And it was filmed as well, and went out on general release, and I think it's now available on YouTube.
It is actually, I saw it today.
Yeah. And so that was great fun to do, and we had an orchestra as well, and a choir.
I imagine that must have been quite a challenging piece of work to play altogether.
It was, yeah, but a lot of fun as well, you know. And it was quite different from what Roger had done with Purple. It wasn't so much. It was a lot more keyboard orientated, you know. And I think he wanted to get away from the Guitar Hero type thing with Richie, you know. So and I think recently he's quoted as saying that he wants to do he's working on a project now to put a West End version of that, as a kind of stage show. So it'll be interesting to see if that actually comes about. You know?
Oh, I certainly hope so. Obviously, he's a busy man himself.
He is, yeah. He's doing some dates with Priest in America.
That's right, there they are, yes. And it wasn't long after that you joined Priest. I believe it was through the connection of Roger Glover. How that job come about?
Yeah, it wasn't long after that. Yeah, I'd done a tour with Eric Burden Band.
Yeah.
And then I got a call and asked this from Judas Priest management. And at the time, it was a guy called. There were 4 people, I think, involved in the management company, and one of them was a guy called David Hemmings, not the actor, but I think he used to be tour manager for Black Sabbath. So, and I think he was from the Midlands, from around that part. So he was the only one in that organisation that had any hands-on experience on the road, you know. And I got on fine with him. He was a nice guy, no problem with him at all. The other guys were more, they didn't have that experience that he had, and they were more money-orientated folk, shall we say. So they just recorded this. I think they were on the verge of breaking up at the time, because they'd made 2 albums on a very small record label called Gull Records. The first one was Rock and Roller. Second one was what's the second album?
Sad Wings Destiny.
Sad Wings of Destiny. So those are both on the Gull label, and I think they were getting very small record advances, and to try and tour and promote their albums was financially disastrous. So it was make or break time, and these guys approached them and said, "Look, if you sign up with us, we'll get you a worldwide record deal, get you out of your old contracts, and we'll put you on the road to success, so to speak." So they signed up to them for everything, basically management, recording rights, everything, which was a big mistake. But I was sent a pre-release copy of the Sin After Sin album, and I loved. Simon's one of my favorite drummers anyway, so I enjoyed his playing on that, and it was a challenge to learn all his drum parts. And so I got together with the guys, and we at the time I was only using one bass drum, and so I had to quite quickly get a second bass drum. I had played with Fancy, I dabbled with double bass drum stuff in the past, and some of the live gigs that we did, but it was periodic, so most of the time I'd be using just one bass drum. And when I heard the album, obviously it was the first time anyone had played double bass drums in the band, and so I had to learn all those parts and get a second bass drum to do it. And I had limited time to do it as well, so we had the tour already set up. But everything went fine, and we did a British tour. But you're going back to your question, it was Roger that mentioned me, because he was responsible also for bringing Simon in to do the Sin After Sin album. But Simon had other commitments and wasn't really interested in touring with the band. I think he had a tour set up with Jack Bruce Band. So, and I think they forgot for a moment that they got a tour set up. Hey, we haven't got a drummer. So Roger mentioned me, and that was the connection there, and everything worked out fine. And we did a British tour, and the thing that struck me immediately was, even though the band up until that point had only released 2 albums prior to this one, they had built up quite a strong fan base. This was the first experience I had of playing in what eventually developed into a major metal band. I played all kinds. As a session drummer, was because I was working on the studio circuit. I was a session drummer before that, and I had played all diverse styles of music, and this was the first experience I had of playing straight metal, and I had to invent it as I went along. And the thing that struck me was the fans that the band had built up were incredibly loyal. They wouldn't be content with coming to see you when you were visiting their town. They'd follow you around the country and go to as many of the gigs as they could take in. That was something that I found, quite I never experienced that kind of thing before. So I realised that was kind of special, that metal fans have incredible loyalty.
And what was your opinion of Judas Priest when you first joined them? Because heavy metal was very young in its infancy then. We had like Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
But Judas Priest were the first real heavy, powerful metal band.
Yeah, and I think it didn't quite start off that way, because it kind of evolved into that.
Yeah.
And I think it's just part of the Midlands thing. You've got bands like Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, although Zeppelin I wouldn't call metal, but some of the stuff verges upon it. I think the thing that was obviously that everybody was a Brummie, except me. I was the only Irishman in the band, and I lived in London, and they all lived still up in Birmingham way. So I had to travel up quite a lot to rehearse with them, and to so it was kind of, it did make us sort of a me and them kind of situation, because they'd been together for a number of years and I was the new guy in the band. And when I look back on the first album and the second album, there's two different drummers. And then the third album, they had Simon, there's three different drummers, you know, and then I come along, you know, I'm thinking, how safe is my situation here, you know? And it was an interesting experience, and I really enjoyed every minute of it, you know. It was such a fun to play to those audiences.
So the first album you performed on yourself was Stained Class.
Yeah.
And the opening track, Exciter, which predates the song Painkiller by about 12, 13 years. A very fast and furious song. You know, was that your idea, that drum intro and everything?
It came about from, funny enough, at a sound check. I don't know where it was, somewhere when we were on tour, we got to a sound check. And it's just something that came into my head just instinctively. And I just played that, what turned out to be the drum intro. Mm-hmm. As a jam, you know, and Glenn picked up on it, and I said, oh, play that again, you know, play that again. So I played it again, and he came in with the guitar riff, and that was kind of how the song began. Mm. Well, later on we worked on it and developed it further, so the point where we could go into the studio and record it. But that's how it came about. And really, I'd heard Deep Purple's what's it called?
Fireball.
Fireball.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Now, I really liked Ian Pace's drumming, but he always played a single bass drum, and in those days, you didn't have the option of using a twin bass drum pedal. Nowadays you can buy a double pedal which has two beaters on it, and an arm links across to a second pedal. So you can play double bass drum patterns on a single bass drum, but those hadn't quite been perfected and weren't available back in the 70s. It wasn't until sort of around the early 80s that they really started manufacturing acceptable versions of that. So when they did that particular track, Fireball, Ian used a second bass drum, and so that I really liked that track, and I wanted to do something along those lines, which kind of inspired me to do the Exciter thing. You know, that was kind of in my head at the time. And funny enough, I don't understand the logic in this at all, but I watched a clip on YouTube of Deep Purple back in the 70s performing that song, Fireball, and there's Ian with his single bass drum, right, kit, and he's left-handed, and a roadie brings on a second bass drum and sets it up next to his other one, right? And then at the end of that song, it takes it away again. You know, I thought, well, if you're going to play double bass drum, keep it as part of your set, you know, so you don't have to mess around and do all that, you know. But that was a weird one. I mean, I think Ian plays a twin pedal nowadays, you know, but